From a clinical perspective, Olivia is not merely forgetting a man, she is suffering a rupture between emotional imprint and conscious recall. Her nervous system reacts to him before her intellect can defend itself. Meanwhile, Giovanni exhibits the psychology of a man trapped between devotion and control, desperate to protect yet willing to orchestrate her reality to keep from losing her again. Around them, family members become participants in a carefully managed illusion, justifying deception as treatment. But the most disturbing question is not whether they lied. It is whether the lie worked because her unconscious mind never stopped loving him. Watch the full story because what unfolds is more than romance. It is a chilling psychological case study in trauma, attachment, and the terrifying persistence of love.
Olivia's consciousness flickered to life, a mosaic of shattered moments. An unsettling wrongness permeated her very apartment, a deep dissonance in the fabric of her world. Outside, her world was poised for perfection, camera equipment waiting. But inside, a cavernous void consumed her past. Her own reflection revealed a stark, purple bruise, a mark from a story she couldn't recall. With no memory of a struggle, her mind concocted a simple lie, a clumsy fall. It was a fragile shield against a reality threatening to shatter her completely. A shrill ring cut through the quiet. It was her mother, her voice, a syrupy confection of false worry, beginning a subtle interrogation. Olivia's words were met with an unnerving, vacant echo. Her mother mentioned a prescription from Dr. Reynolds, a name utterly foreign. Olivia found the vial, a relic from a forgotten life labeled post-viral immune support. Defeated, she surrendered to the voice. The narrative of a recent virus was woven insistently by her mother, the medication presented as vital. Olivia searched her mind's blank canvas for any memory of illness, but found nothing. She recited her lines on cue. A suffocating dread descended after the call. Gazing at the city, she felt spectral, untethered from the world below. Only the promise of a gallery show kept her moored to the present. Megan's call from this gallery was a delicate dance, glossing over Olivia's strange absence. Later, her own photographs felt alien, accomplished, yet created by the hands of a stranger. She moved through this gallery opening on pure instinct. A hollow automaton, reciting pleasantries as the void in her mind hummed. Then, the world muted, collapsing into a single, sharp focus. A gaze found her, not a fleeting glance, but an intentional, piercing stare. Her eyes met his instantly. A man, Giovanni, impeccably dressed. When he saw her notice, his focus burned even brighter. In that shared glance, the gallery ceased to exist. The world dissolved, leaving only him. His expression, a conflict of sorrow and longing, awakened something ancient within her soul. A violent rhythm erupted in her chest as he approached, his intention absolute. "Your work is remarkable," his voice, a silken thread. Olivia summoned a fragile smile, a mask for the storm inside. "Have we not met before?" he probed gently. "No," she replied, the denial too sharp, betraying a truth she could not grasp. A shadow crossed his features before he seamlessly shifted the topic. Nearer now, she noticed a pale scar tracing his throat, her gaze captured by it. "I'm Giovanni," he said, extending his hand. Their contact sent a jolt through her, a current that stole her breath. He held her hand a moment too long, his thumb tracing the frantic pulse at her wrist as his eyes pleaded with hers. "Just static," she lied. "Not strange," he countered softly. "Unexpected." The word hung between them, heavy. Giovanni. The name reverberated in her mind's hollows, a familiar melody without a memory. Reason insisted they were strangers, yet his gaze isolated her, a solitary beam of light. He closed the distance, his cologne enveloping her. "We should speak of your work in a more private setting," he proposed, the pretext transparent. Every fiber of her logic screamed in protest, yet intuition warred against reason, and won. She heard herself assent, drawn by an invisible current. A fleeting wave of profound relief washed over his face before being swiftly concealed. He guided her to a secluded cafe, his hand held near her back, a gesture both protective and proprietary. Seated, he returned to the pretense, commending her art to maintain the facade. His inquiries revealed an intimate knowledge of her work, a calculated effort to forge a bond, yet no amount of pleasantry could mask the simmering tension. Each touch reignited that electric charge. Her question about his profession was met with a nebulous reply about global enterprise. The deliberate vagueness confirmed it was nothing more than a carefully constructed fabrication. The question escaped her, raw and unfiltered. Who are you? He deflected with a lyrical notion of fate. Before she could press, her mother's name illuminated her screen. A too perfect intrusion. Family crise, he observed with an air of foreknowledge. Her mother's strained voice returned to the medication, her paranoid inquiries confirming the call was merely surveillance, an assertion of control. Her mother recited a list of symptoms: dizziness, disorientation. When challenged, she retreated into the role of the concerned parent, a tactic designed to make Olivia question her own sanity. Upon her return, he was already concluding their time, a masterful exit. He offered his card, placing the next move in her hands. Sometimes you must trust what you feel like about the nose capit Malwhites, he said, a direct challenge. And then he vanished. He departed with the composed assurance of a man in absolute control. The card read, Giovanni Moretti. The name felt like a key to an unknown lock, turning to release a sudden, piercing grief. For 3 days, his name was a constant refrain in her thoughts. At last, consumed by the need for answers, she called. He answered on the first ring, and the sound of her name on his lips, Olivia, sent a chill through her. She had anticipated discussing art, but was met with a weighted silence. Dinner, he stated, less an invitation than a command. We can finalize our arrangement. Though every instinct screamed a warning, she heard herself agree. The affirmation escaped her before thought could intervene. The restaurant was an enclave of quiet wealth. The host's disdain melted at his name. Moretti. The deference was immediate. Mr. Moretti, this way. He was led to a secluded booth, commanding a view of the room. Wine materialized, poured with reverence. Do you come here often? She ventured. For many years, he replied, settling in as if he owned the foundations. The owner is a dear friend. Their talk began easily, a carefully laid snare. He didn't just appreciate her art, he understood it with an unsettling intimacy. You have an affinity for cityscapes, he observed, leaning closer. Yet your work is filled with tempests. Why? The answer arose from instinct, a confession about her fascination with rain's purifying force. As she spoke, his features softened, overcome by a palpable, profound relief, as if she had provided the last piece to his puzzle. What was that? She demanded. That expression, as if I said precisely what you needed. His jaw clenched. Perhaps you did, he evaded. My apologies, he murmured, his hand hovering above hers. Certain things are difficult to articulate. Starters arrived, her precise favorites, absent the olives. A fortunate guess, she asked, her voice edged. Observation, he corrected, his hand finally covering hers. The current returned. This time, the jolt was more profound. You are remarkably transparent, he murmured. She had always considered herself inscrutable, yet he read her as if he'd known her for a lifetime. For hours they spoke, orbiting an unspoken truth, At times, he would drift into Italian, a language her heart recognized but her mind could not decipher. His English was deliberate, a stark contrast to the fervor in his gaze. "And your family?" he inquired. "They reside in the suburbs." An elder sister, Lauren. "You are close," he stated as fact. "Yes, but my mother, her paranoia has grown." "Perhaps she has cause." The ensuing silence was heavy. "It's just a mother's way," she dismissed, though his tone suggested a darker truth. He escorted her home near midnight, their footsteps echoing on the silent streets. He maintained a perfect distance, near enough for protection, far enough for propriety. "Will I see you again?" he asked at her door, the business pretense gone. Her sharp no did not stir him. "What do you want?" "To know you," he answered, his fingers tracing her jaw with a slow, reverent touch. "If you will permit me," he finished. She offered no challenge to his unnerving familiarity or the deference he commanded. Only a slight nod. He withdrew, but the phantom of his touch remained, a brand upon her skin. The following day, 24 white roses appeared. A classic gambit. Unsigned, yet the sender was unmistakable. She called, and he answered immediately as if waiting. His invitation was bold, but the calculated please at its end, a feigned vulnerability, utterly disarmed her. From then on, Giovanni began a systematic courtship, accelerating the passage of time. He infiltrated her existence disguised as the consummate gentleman. The randomness of her life evaporated, supplanted by his choreographed encounters, materializing outside her work, on her path home. During a brief call, she mentioned him. A simple, "I've met someone." Her mother's tone sharpened, eager for information. When Olivia detailed his intensity, her mother pressed for his name. Giovanni Moretti was met with a significant silence, then an unnaturally ecstatic, "Oh, darling, that's wonderful." The false enthusiasm was painful in its transparency, a poorly rehearsed performance. Olivia's logical objections were met with hollow platitudes and a demand to meet him. Her hesitation earned more forced celebration before her mother pivoted abruptly to vitamins from some unknown physician. Olivia has no recollection of where the prescription originated, yet acknowledges she is taking medication from a Dr. Reynolds. Her mother brushes aside her haze with a flimsy story of some invented sickness, a classic tactic of manipulators. The conspiracy deepens when her friend Megan shows up at her door, completely unannounced. Megan arrives bearing gifts, but her smile is strained with unease. She admits to speaking with Olivia's mom about the new man, confirming a coordinated family operation. Her mother's manic enthusiasm had been a clear signal they were all executing a hidden agenda. When Olivia admits she's feeling unnerved, Megan offers no comfort, instead launching a detached interrogation about her symptoms. These medical questions echo lines she has heard before, as if from a shared script. The topic returns to the vitamins, and then Olivia realizes she has no memory of ever meeting Dr. Reynolds. A tiny involuntary twitch from Megan is the only confirmation she needs. She resorts to classic gaslighting, insisting memory loss is typical after a severe illness. Yet for Olivia, there is no memory of sickness, only a void now occupied by a man who knows her past and a family telling blatant lies to her. Megan attempts to soothe her, but her darting eyes betray her as she labels Olivia's rational fears a spiral. The campaign of isolation persists when her sister Lauren cancels dinner, her voice thick with unsaid guilt as she hides behind a vague excuse. Lauren simply parrots the family's pro-Giovanni narrative, reciting a script she clearly received from someone else. Her casual disregard for Olivia's fears is utterly chilling. 2 nights on, Giovanni arranges another dinner, a new venue, but the same atmosphere of dread and compliance from everyone there. Surveying the room, she feels an energy of both reverence and stark terror, the hallmarks of a man with immense concealed influence. She confronts him directly, and he offers a feeble lie about an import business. When she challenges it, his expression goes empty as he gives a non-answer. His intimidation is simply who he is. She recognizes this as a complete evasion, but he refuses to elaborate, using physical contact to shift the topic. His question, "Can that be enough?" is a low blow, appealing to emotion over reason. In that instant, his feigned vulnerability bypasses her instincts, a mistake she regrets immediately. She must concede she is utterly paralyzed, drawn to him by an invisible force that overrules all logic, fear, and the mounting proof that this is all an elaborate deception. In just 14 days, Giovanni has integrated into her world so flawlessly it feels like destiny. He is an unwavering presence, his constant attention a form of gentle surveillance masked as affection. His uncanny knack for anticipating her needs, like producing an umbrella the moment rain begins, is more unsettling than sweet. Her remark on their speed is the understatement of the year. She is being ensnared at an impossible pace. With the city lights shimmering on the river, he sidesteps her comment with some profound-sounding abstraction, framing his predatory haste as a matter of perspective. His fingers weave through hers as if they have always belonged there. When she calls out his avoidance, he pivots, offering the illusion of control by asking if he should ease up. The proposal is a complete fabrication, and her refusal is precisely the outcome he desired. She is desperate for some reason behind this overwhelming connection between them, but she holds back the question. The relief that washes over his face is a massive tell, as is his admission that he couldn't have stopped regardless. The kiss that follows is a sensory overload engineered to silence all doubt. The kiss is a storm of controlled passion, a perfectly calibrated hunger designed to ensnare her, not devour her. He pulls away, leaving her entire world tilted on its axis. From that point, Vittorio, no longer Giovanni, begins crafting false realities for her, starting at a botanical garden where his VIP status is another unspoken display of his influence. They stroll through humid glass houses filled with orchids and exotic flora. He identifies every single one with an astonishing casual expertise. When Olivia questions how he knows so much, his eyes fix on hers as he says, "I notice beautiful things," twisting a compliment into a claim of ownership. His next exhibition of power is a rooftop restaurant she has only ever admired from the street, a venue with an impossible wait list. The host addresses Vittorio by name, escorting them to the premier table. As Chicago glitters beneath them, Olivia instinctively lifts her hands to frame the view for a photograph. "It is more striking in a storm," Vittorio remarks, his gaze fixed on her, not the skyline. "Lightning makes the entire city seem alive, dangerous, beautiful." Those exact words send a jolt through her system, a sense of déjà vu so powerful she must steady herself on the table. It is the absolute conviction of a memory she does not possess. A phantom image surfaces in her mind, her in this very seat, watching a tempest break over the city. Her panic is palpable, and Vittorio's concern is immediate. Her question, "Have I been here with you before?" makes his jaw tighten. He evades, gently probing with the word "familiar," affirming her sensation while concealing its origin. After a long, steady gaze, he murmurs some nonsense about mystical bonds between souls and locations, but his delivery confirms he understands exactly what is occurring. The mental disturbance is soon supported by physical proof back at her apartment. where she discovers high-end camera equipment she never purchased. The evidence continues to mount. Volumes on Italian architecture on a previously bare shelf and a new designer jacket in her closet, tag still on, fitting perfectly. A call to Megan yields a frantic and foreseeable denial. Olivia informs her about the camera gear she has no memory of ever acquiring. A long pause after she states the item's price speaks volumes. Megan defaults to another gaslighting script, implying amnesia is a symptom of her condition. Confronted with the solid fact of a $3,000 lens, she retreats to the plan, deflecting by inquiring about the vitamins. Her affirmative answer is met with false reassurance, promoting the absurd notion that vitamins can simply restore lost time. This narrative completely dismisses the tangible evidence. 3 days later, the family's coordinated effort advances with a call from her mother, timed perfectly to disrupt her day. The invitation for Vittorio to join a family dinner is made with a nauseating, feigned excitement. Olivia notes how strangely everyone is behaving, a charge her mom instantly refutes with excruciatingly forced cheer. The call then shifts to her mother actively fabricating history, claiming Olivia constantly talks about him. Following a strained quiet, her mother attempts to package their odd behavior as simple parental worry. But every note of their performance is wrong, like a melody played in a dissonant key. Olivia consents to the dinner, not out of desire, but from a need to observe all the conspirators together on one stage. And so, Vittorio's car is speeding through the suburbs on Saturday evening. He is wearing a shirt that costs more than her rent, radiating an air of effortless wealth. She asks if he is nervous, and he nearly laughs, as if the feelings of ordinary people meeting parents are entirely alien to him. "I am not most people," he states, taking her hand with a possessive grip. His assertion that her parents will be gracious is deeply unnerving. It feels less like a welcome and more like a foregone conclusion to a transaction. True to form, her mother opens the door, nearly vibrating with anxiety, prepared to perform. The greeting is so rigid, it is obviously rehearsed. Her father appears, and the handshake between the men is a fluid motion of business tinged with menace. Vittorio's words of thanks are met with a look that is not paternal, but rather a cold assessment of a rival. Dad's first query about his business is a clear signal. This is an evaluation, not a social visit. While the men discuss finances, the true tension is in the kitchen, where her mother's trembling hands betray her entire facade. Her fixation on absolute perfection is the first indicator that something is profoundly amiss, an act of normalcy that her daughter begins to see through completely. The mother takes refuge in the role of mom meeting the boyfriend, a clear defense mechanism. Meanwhile, Vittorio begins a masterful charm offensive, deploying a fabricated tragic story about Italy to instantly win her parents' sympathy. Giovanni's invented history is a purely calculated maneuver to fast-track their trust. This immediate sense of family feels deeply wrong, like a tear in the fabric of reality. A subsequent private discussion with the father shifts the atmosphere from social to transactional, confirming that a bargain has been struck. Her mother's sudden endorsement of Giovanni is met with questions she is utterly unable to field. Her justifications are empty, her movements almost mechanical. When pressed, she falls back at the classic "it's just a feeling" defense, the final refuge of someone caught in a lie. Trapped in a corner, the mother begins weaving a convoluted excuse about trusting some larger plan. Just as she seems on the verge of revealing the scheme, the men reappear, ending the conversation. The timing is almost too perfect to be a coincidence. Giovanni departs with an Oscar-worthy performance, a complete reversal from the earlier tension. Later, his obsessive focus on gaining her parents' approval is a massive red flag, suggesting this has been part of a years-long plot. His response is some philosophical evasion, speaking of a bond that transcends linear time. This man thrives on speaking in riddles, a strategy to make his secrecy feel profound and romantic rather than what it is, deeply deceptive. He frames his unnerving gaze as profound devotion, claiming a knowledge of her that feels like a shared past. But obsession and intimacy are not the same, a warning sign her mind can't ignore after only 2 short weeks. He twists her skepticism, recasting her need for logic as a simple test of faith. He asks for her trust, not her comprehension, punctuating the plea with a disarming touch. Her mind craves proof, but she yields to the power of his performance. Her whispered yes is a surrender, allowing his touch to silence her rational mind. Yet a deep instinct screams of a monumental secret buried just beneath the surface. We are then pulled from her world into Vittorio's private sanctum, a place she has only ever glimpsed from the shadows. They enter a dim, private chamber engineered for intimidation. The gown she wears is not her own. It is a costume he provided, fitting like a second skin. His motive is disarmingly simple. He wants his men to see her. His hand on her knee is an overt display of power, a public claim asserted through the fabric of her dress. The message is clear. These men must recognize her significance. She feels the cold, appraising gazes of 15 older men, a silent, imposing jury. The embrace between the 2 men speaks of a deep and formidable history. She is introduced to Franco Bellini, whose firm grip is merely a prelude to the way his eyes meticulously dissect her. His courteous words are hollow, rendered meaningless by the intensity of his gaze. Vittorio's expression isn't one of pleasure, but of calculation, shadowed by a flicker of concern. His hand remains on her, a persistent anchor of his control. The talk is a wall of coded jargon, a dialect designed specifically to exclude her. A casual question about her profession serves only as a preface to a formal toast. The words, "Our Giovanni," ring out as a public declaration of his allegiance to them, an allegiance that now, by extension, seems to bind her as well. Franco's gaze is a source of unrelenting pressure, a ceaseless evaluation. A quiet, weighted glance is exchanged between him and Vittorio, deepening her sense of displacement just before another man directs his unsettling focus upon her. And then, a fracture in the facade. A man carelessly asks how she is settling back in. That single phrase detonates her reality, implying a past she cannot recall, a psychological bomb she disarms with a placid smile, masking the vertigo within. Vittorio's hand tightens on her, a silent admission that he heard the slip. A brief, raw panic crosses his features before his composure is restored. Later, at her apartment, he pauses at the threshold, not as a lover, but as a man searching for hidden threats. Within her walls, he moves with an unnerving familiarity, as if retracing steps taken 1,000 times before. His embrace is pure desperation, a silent plea for her to validate a reality that has, for her, just been completely demolished. She gives him the words he needs, and the dissonance is staggering. While her mind screams that this is all foreign, her body responds with pure instinct, a phantom muscle memory from a life her consciousness cannot reach. He begins to speak in a tongue she doesn't recognize, yet its cadence stirs a strange echo of familiarity. Sleep is impossible. Propelled by a deep, gnawing suspicion, she rises from the bed, determined to uncover the truth. A frantic impulse drives her to his jacket, a violation of his trust. There, she discovers a dozen photographs of them in poses of deep intimacy, complete with wedding bands. The images are a direct assault on her memory, precipitating a catastrophic collapse of her mind. The locations in the photographs are entirely alien to her. The final devastating blow is a professional wedding portrait, which strikes her with the force of a physical impact. It is the perfect, impossible evidence of a horrifying void in her own history. She then uncovers a receipt for a 16 by 20-inch custom frame, flagged as a rush order. This small detail is the final proof. He recently and intentionally constructed this false past, confirming this is all a cold, methodical deception. A choked gasp leaves her as he materializes in the doorway. His gaze finds the photos, his face paling in a silent, stark confession. Her voice fractured by shock, she raises the portrait of a wedding that lives nowhere in her memory. The void in her mind pours out through her voice, a litany of pure panic. He advances slowly, attempting to calm the storm. But his defense, a fragile web of lies and omissions, disintegrates beneath her stare. She casts the photos down, a violent rejection of the life they depict. Her anguish deepens into a crisis of self. Who is she, truly? He reaches for her, but she recoils as if from a flame. As her reality dissolves around her, he offers a look of pained empathy, insisting there was a reason for his profound betrayal. The word "we" detonates in the room, widening the conspiracy to encompass everyone she thought she could trust. She shies away from his touch once more. Her demand for an explanation makes him falter until he retreats behind the authority of doctors and the twisted logic of protection. His facade finally cracks, exposing his true intent to help you remember. The admission strikes her with such force that her legs give way. From the floor, she whispers the diagnosis herself: amnesia. He confirms it, attributing it to an accident. He reveals the timeline. An accident 6 weeks prior erased the last 2 years of her life. Suddenly, it all connects. The medication, her mother's strained affection, her friends' ceaseless watchfulness, coalescing into a single terrifying conspiracy. The betrayal is absolute. So you chose to seduce me all over again. Instead of telling me the truth, she seethes, her words laced with venom. He deflects, blaming medical advice that it was safer to let their connection rebuild organically. A raw, fractured laugh escapes her. His proposed cure is the very definition of madness. He is reduced to pleading, insisting every deception was a desperate act to keep her. Her response is a single glacial command: leave. At the door, his final words are, "I love you." One last desperate grasp for truth amidst the mountain of lies he constructed. She awakens in a haze, a phantom drifting through her own home. The apartment is a gallery of a life she cannot recall, shared with a man they call her husband. A phone's sudden shriek shatters the quiet. It is her friend Megan, poised to detonate another truth. The conversation unfolds like a rehearsed, perverse play. Megan's timing, almost impossibly precise. When Olivia confronts her, Megan confesses freely. The entire deception was conceived at the hospital. They all hide behind the shield of doctor's orders, an excuse Olivia refuses to accept. Megan attempts to defend the twisted reasoning that a monumental lie could foster a genuine bond. Olivia rejects it completely, ending the call and embracing utter isolation. Her reality is now in fragments, and the ghost of this man haunts every single one. Following a 3-day descent, she shifts into the role of detective, treating her own life as a crime scene. The first clue appears in her financial records: suspicious deposits and strange transfers leading to the irrefutable evidence. Joint accounts with Giovanni Moretti. She unearths a passport whose pages narrate a European holiday she never experienced. Stamps from Milan, Rome, and Florence from the previous year offer more evidence of a history that seems to belong to a stranger, deepening the void in her mind. A search of her laptop reveals the digital phantoms of a deleted life: medical appointments, gown fittings, and wedding spreadsheets. This electronic trail confirms her deepest fear. A full 2-year portion of her identity was systematically removed. 20 minutes later, she stands before Lauren, another player in this grand deception. Her unannounced arrival and fierce demand for answers signal a complete reversal of power. The lies are over. She requires the whole truth. The subject of the experiment is now in command. Lauren begins by calling the truth complex before taking the story back 6 weeks. She describes a vehicle not losing control but being methodically driven off a secluded highway. In an instant, the term accident evaporates, replaced by attempted murder. Lauren's hardened demeanor begins to fracture as she reveals the assault was a calculated strike by rivals of Giovanni's organization. The car, she explains, overturned 3 times and lay undiscovered for almost an hour. The cold truth of that intentional violence begins to settle in. To Olivia's question of the severity, Lauren recites a grim inventory. Severe head trauma, fractured bones, and extensive internal hemorrhaging. She was medevaced and placed in a coma to prevent cerebral swelling. "We thought we'd lost you," she says, her composure finally breaking. She mentions Giovanni stayed awake for 2 weeks, simply holding her hand. "But I woke up." "Yes, after 14 days. When you awoke, the last 2 years had vanished. Your personal history was wiped clean." She possessed no memory of Giovanni, their marriage, or their life together. It was a textbook case of retrograde amnesia. "So, you all decided to lie." "It wasn't a lie," Lauren retorts, her unease showing. "The neurologist said forcing the memories on you could trigger a complete psychological collapse. The recommended course was gentler, allow the romance to begin anew, hoping your memories would return without further harm. We chose to let you rediscover him, free of the past. That is madness. It was a strategy for survival. You were at death's door, Olivia," Lauren's voice cracks. "Your husband was shattering. We were just trying to protect you." That single word, husband, lands like a physical blow. He is a stranger. But he wasn't. The woman you once were. She was utterly devoted to him. "And I am not that woman, am I?" Lauren moves closer. "Yet you fell in love with him a second time. In a matter of weeks, that connection between you sparked to life again. That has to count for something." Before Olivia can object, a doorbell sounds. A glance at her phone blanches Lauren's face. "Your parents are outside. You contacted them. They had a right to know you uncovered the truth." They enter, their features etched with a tense, practiced concern. Her mother attempts an embrace, but Olivia's body instinctively recoils. "Honey, we are so sorry. We considered telling you every single day." "Then what stopped you?" Her father sinks to the couch, seeming to age a decade in an instant. "Because telling you about a 2-year void, a lost marriage, and a violent assault felt monumentally more cruel." "So how was I meant to handle that? You just let me believe I was losing my mind?" "Never," her mother insists, clutching her hands. "We were shielding you, hoping you would recover on your own. It was the only way we could imagine." Olivia pulls her hands free. "I want the medical file, the complete record now." Her father takes out his phone, and an instant later, her inbox is overwhelmed. Hospital admissions, brain scans, neurology reports, all chronicling Olivia Parker's severe, traumatic brain injury from 6 weeks prior. The proof is absolute, but her mind cannot bridge the gap. "I have to talk to Giovanni," she finally declares. "Sweetheart, perhaps it's too soon." "No, I must see him immediately." Her mother concedes with a sigh. "I will call him." He is there in less than 15 minutes, as if he had been waiting just beyond the door. The moment he enters, the raw torment on his face constricts her chest. "Olivia," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "Could we speak privately?" Lauren's bedroom is the only retreat. They take positions on opposite sides of the bed, a universe of silence stretching between them. "Explain," she demands. "Begin at the start, and do not dare omit a single detail." Giovanni leans on the wall as if for support. "We met 2 years ago at your gallery opening." He was meant to be working, but he was completely spellbound by her photographs. "From the instant we began to talk, my entire existence shifted." "What is it you do for a living?" she asks. "The unvarnished truth?" "I manage an organization. The official title is Import-Export. Beneath that facade, our business is in the shadows. Some of it breaks the law, some exists in a moral twilight." His eyes remain locked on hers. "I am not a virtuous man, Olivia, but for you, I tried to be." "So the man I married is a criminal?" "You married a man," he counters, "who respected you enough to offer you a choice. After 3 months together, I revealed everything. I was sure you would leave." His voice softens. "But you remained." "Why?" "You saw beyond my world to the man I hoped to be. You believed in my capacity to change, and your love, it was a staggering force." He pushes himself from the wall. "We were wed 6 months ago. It was an intimate ceremony. Only our family and closest friends. You held white roses. You said they reminded you of the first snowfall." The words resonate deep inside her. White roses, snow, the phantom of a memory, gone before she can grasp it. "The attack," she says, her voice flat. "That falls on me. You should have been guarded. I never should have approved that job." He recounts how driven she was by the project, a will he couldn't deny, his voice heavy with regret. Their adversaries saw a vulnerability. They observed her, waiting for the perfect moment. Then they forced her off the road. When she demands to know who, his reply is succinct. "Our competition. They have been dealt with." The statement is cold, absolute. "And you concluded a lie was preferable to this reality." He refers to the neurologist's final recommendation. A Dr. Reynolds warned that forcing her memories could shatter her psyche permanently, that letting her rediscover her own way was the only compassionate course. Giovanni crosses his arms, a human shield. "So we recreated our first meeting, our first dates, all of it." The words felt like acid in his throat as he spoke of the new beginning she'd been given, free from the chains of history. Yet she'd chosen this anyway. With him, a man she now called an absolute stranger. He closed the distance between them, his voice a raw whisper. "I am no stranger." He pleaded that every shared breath was genuine, that the memory was all that was missing, not the feeling. She shot back, "How can I trust that?" He answered with the only truth left. "Because you can feel it." His fingers found hers, and in a moment of fragile surrender, she did not pull away. He told her the body keeps a score the mind has lost. In her instinctive reactions, her unguarded laughter, the way her gaze settled on him when she thought he wasn't looking. This wasn't an act, it was proof. She desperately wanted to fight, to armor herself in anger, but with the heat of his hand over hers, a warmth that traveled straight to her soul. The bond was irrefutable. Some primal instinct insisted she knew him, even as her conscious mind remained a barren wasteland. "I need time," she whispered. "Take whatever you need," he answered, and you could feel the battle he waged to release her hand. "I am staying." No matter the duration, even if you never recall, even if you choose a different existence, I am staying. But what if I am not the woman you married? You are. Memories do not define a person. You're still Olivia, who adores thunderstorms, who rambles in 5 languages when under stress, who eats ice cream from the carton after midnight. A sad smile traced his lips. You are still the woman for whom I would sacrifice everything. She departed from Lauren's place alone, declining every offered ride. She needed the walk, the quiet, to process the crushing burden of a history that felt like it belonged to someone else. As she neared her home, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. The voice on the line introduced himself. Later, in bed, she kept to the furthest edge, a chasm contained within inches of mattress. Just before dawn, he laid a blanket over her and placed a glass of water on the table. Their movements were pure instinct, a physical language spoken when the mind is silent. They were charting a new existence from nothing, completely without a guide. Dr. Reynolds, the man on the phone had said, your family requested I contact you. I need to schedule a meeting to review your progress. Progress. The word branded her a defective specimen. Perhaps she was. Tomorrow, she agreed. I will be there tomorrow. Alone, she confronted photos of a life she could not claim. This smiling, brilliant doppelganger in the arms of a stranger was more than unsettling. It was like a psychic explosion confirming her mind was completely shattered. Not one memory surfaced, only a profound, gnawing conviction that she had lost something immense. Dr. Reynolds' office, on the highest floor of an anonymous medical building, felt unnervingly familiar. It was all glass, with a stunning view of the city, built to be both sterile and soothing. A receptionist spoke her name before she could even check in. Miss Parker, Dr. Reynolds is expecting you. Please go straight in. The neurologist appeared younger than she anticipated, around 45, with compassionate eyes. He stood. Olivia, I am very glad you could come. She cut straight to the point. You are the doctor who wrote the prescription. Her tone was a clear accusation. Yes, we advised your family it was for post-viral immune support, he confirmed, motioning to a chair. In truth, it was for neurological agents to assist your recovery from a traumatic brain injury. She sat, her limbs feeling like liquid. They all kept repeating that cold term, traumatic brain injury, as if its repetition could somehow erase the terror. Is there another phrase you would find more suitable? He asked. I would prefer the raw truth, the entire file. No more condensed versions or comforting narratives. He accessed her records, turning his screen so she could see the brain scans that illuminated it. Her brain, before and after, the images revealed a total devastation that she could feel but not comprehend. 6 weeks ago, your car left the highway causing severe head trauma. The impact resulted in a subdural hematoma, cerebral swelling, and significant damage to your frontal and temporal lobes. His finger outlined the wreckage on the display. We were forced to place you in a medically induced coma to manage the pressure inside your skull. You were unconscious for 14 days. When she awakened, the injury was undeniable. Retrograde amnesia, a clean 2-year erasure. Older memories were preserved. The recent ones were simply gone. She gazed at the images of her own mind, a broken and alien object. That 2-year window is clinically anomalous. This pattern of memory loss is not in the textbooks. The trauma struck the exact regions vital for creating and accessing memories. This specific period of time was likely the last solid block of memory your brain successfully formed. When discussing her chances, Dr. Reynolds chose his subsequent words with great deliberation. Regaining some memories is more probable than a complete recovery. You might experience flashes, feelings before facts, but a full restoration is not a certainty. Unveiling all of this at once would have triggered a psychological catastrophe. Confronting an individual with a massive gap in their identity, especially concerning a marriage, can precipitate a severe depressive spiral. Our strategy was a gentle reintroduction. Studies confirm that experiential learning is safer than a cognitive flood. You interpreted it as a deception. We viewed it as therapy. Our singular aim was to protect your mind as it healed. This approach, effective in cases like yours, permits emotions to rebuild organically, which can sometimes even reactivate memories. And if that proves insufficient, this path could forge a new, fragile connection, a chance to begin again. But the session was shattered by their entrance. Her parents, with Giovanni, arrived in a moment so perfectly timed it felt like a play, and on her mother's face the glistening tracks of fresh tears. Her mother conceded. The demand for the complete truth was justified. The terms were absolute, every medical chart, the collision summary, each choice made in the darkness of her coma. Her father presented a dense file, the tangible weight of every whispered diagnosis, every argument over her fate. She accepted the file, a slight tremor in her hands. Giovanni lingered by the door, a man holding himself apart, yet a tempest was visible in his eyes. Her gaze locked onto his, a silent command for the whole story. He closed the distance and began to speak of a drive, a job 2 hours from Chicago. He spoke of a sit-down with a man named Franco, a dispute over territory turning hot. Russian rivals were making a play for his shipping lanes. He refused their terms, and so they chose to send their reply through his wife. A single muscle in his jaw pulsed with contained fury. For weeks she had been a target, her routines mapped, her vulnerabilities catalogued. It was a precision strike, a car boxing her in for a devastating impact at speed. The vehicle tore past the guardrail, plunged into a ravine, and tumbled 3 violent times. A nerve near his eye jumped, a ghost of the collision itself. 47 minutes passed before help could reach you, he said, his voice low. You were bleeding out from the inside. A choked sound escaped her mother. Her father's hand found her arm to keep her upright. A helicopter carried her to Northwestern Memorial to a surgeon's desperate work, and then to the ICU. Giovanni's hands were clenched into knots of white bone. He recounted arriving mid-operation and how for 2 weeks of silent coma he never once left her room. Of the men responsible, he stated they were no longer a problem, a chillingly simple eulogy. Dr. Reynolds then revealed that upon waking, lost in a fog, the first name she had uttered was her sister's. Her family faced her, and the 2-year chasm was agonizingly apparent as she spoke of history as if it were today's news. Of Giovanni, there was nothing. The mention of lost time sent her into a panic. The scans told the cruel truth, a precise retrograde amnesia that had carved out every last memory of a life with him. Where he should have been in her mind, there was only a black void. They recounted the words she used to cast him out. His voice shook, reliving the moment she had called him a stranger. His claim of being her husband ignited her terror, which sharpened into accusation. The wound from that instant was still visible on him. That, he explained, was when they sought help. The specialists were unanimous. Forcing the memories could fracture her sanity. She saw their answer for what it was, an intricate lie. Her mother reframed it as rebuilding a life, detailing how they had constructed a new world for her, piece by painful piece, from her home to her career. To her, it felt like a staged courtship, a romance by design. "We only opened a door," Giovanni replied softly. "You were the one who walked through it." Dr. Reynolds pushed the files across the table, inviting her to seek confirmation that this wasn't madness. He stood by their choices with unwavering resolve. She demanded to be taken to the house she had supposedly shared with him. His correction was soft but firm against her bitterness. It was their home. A 30-minute drive from the city passed in crushing silence, taking them into a realm of secluded estates. Automated gates parted, revealing a modern fortress of glass and stone on flawless grounds. The interior was a contradiction, a space utterly unknown, yet filled with objects she herself would have chosen. And on every wall, photographs chronicled a life she could not recall. The images displayed a history she could no longer claim. He guided her to an office, unmistakably of her creation, evidence of a professional life erased from her mind. But it was the master bedroom that broke her, a room saturated with the undeniable proof of a shared, intimate world. Every corner of the home testified to a life they had built within its walls. He then offered her a leather-bound journal. Her own words, he explained, chronicling their story. An entry from 8 months prior, in her own script, detailed a weekend in Napa, filled with whispered secrets. Her own writing captured the instant love had crystallized, a feeling born from being truly seen and accepted without reservation. Tears blurred the ink as the emotional ghost of her former self collided with her. It was a certainty that now belonged to someone she did not know. "I don't know who this man is," she whispered to herself. Giovanni's voice fractured as he apologized, blaming a dangerous life that had ultimately failed to shield her. She held his gaze, the man she was falling for, who was also her husband and the architect of her fabricated reality. She told him plainly that the woman in the journal was a ghost she could never become. He urged her to release that ghost immediately. As panic over her lost past set in, he proposed a new beginning, from nothing. He then vowed an eternal patience, a perfect husband in waiting. She countered that none of this was fair. He replied that his devotion to her was his life's solitary act of goodness. Snapping the journal closed, she saw the house not as a home, but a museum to a stranger. She needed space, a request he granted by yielding the entire estate to her. When she asked where he would go, his gesture was vague, hinting at other places. He had to vanish, he said, so her choice could be her own. Alone, she wandered the pristine rooms, her fingers tracing surfaces, searching for any spark of connection, finding only emptiness. Then the final deception, discovered in a medicine cabinet. Pills for compliance, masked as aids for her recovery. She washed them down the drain, a silent act of rebellion. A call from her sister Megan broke her silence. She confessed her profound sense of being lost. Megan, in turn, confessed their flawed, desperate plan. She understood the motive was protection, but the betrayal still landed like a physical blow. Of Giovanni, she confessed the feelings were real, an undeniable physical pull her mind could not rationalize. This war within her was the crisis. Her sister's only advice, follow that feeling. Her focus began to pivot from the cavern of her past to the reality before her now. In their shared bed, she pressed her face into his pillow, breathing in his scent, a desperate excavation for a single trace of their love, a phantom of their wedding day. Her search yielded only the ache of a past that remained locked away. Yet beneath the pain, a deeper current stirred, not a memory but an intuition of their bond. In a week of solitude and therapy, this feeling became her only anchor. The journal remained a silent witness, its pages offering no clues to the woman who wrote them. On the 5th day, her sister appeared at the door, a portrait of guilt over her role in the elaborate lie. She admitted to nights spent weeping, trapped within the gilded cage they had all helped construct. Over a meal, the entire story unspooled, beginning with Giovanni's frantic, broken voice on the phone from the hospital. A cautious, gradual reintroduction to her life was the only strategy her family and the doctor could devise. Her sister confessed they had rehearsed their stories, justifying the deceit as a necessary shield against her complete mental collapse. The primary goal was to keep her mind from shattering under the strain. She could see the logic, but logic could not grant absolution. Anger gave way to exhaustion. She spoke of a physical connection to Giovanni that defied her memory's void. And then, Lauren's arrival changed everything. Lauren arrived bearing a carefully assembled album, a curated testament to her life with Giovanni. The images argued their love had been a deliberate choice. Lauren insisted she had witnessed her consciously choose this man, fully aware of the world he inhabited. The woman she used to be had been fiercely loyal, her devotion absolute. Lauren observed that this very pattern was now repeating itself. And to the terror of a future without memory, Lauren offered a stunning perspective. This was a rare gift, the chance to choose him a second time. As requested, Giovanni remained absent. His presence felt only in brief messages vowing patience. On the 8th day, she summoned him, demanding their true story. He arrived in under 20 minutes, a man who had clearly never strayed far from his phone. Their second beginning started in a quiet bistro. In a gesture that echoed a life she couldn't recall, he ordered for them both, and she allowed it. He then began their story at its inception in an art gallery 2 years in the past. He spoke of the precise moment his universe tilted on its axis, locking eyes with the stranger. The connection was immediate, igniting a conversation that lasted 4 hours. She asked when the truth of his life had been revealed. After 3 months, he said, in a place he knew was safe. He laid bare the unvarnished facts, certain she would leave. As he spoke those words, his hand reached for hers, but she had stayed, he said, choosing to see the man he could become, not just the man he was. From there, they went to the church where they had been married. Giovanni recounted the day in detail, the blossoms in her hair, the vows that had broken him into tears, and her promise of unwavering loyalty. He believed she honored that vow, even past the attempt on her life. Inside that sanctuary, a phantom emotion stirred, an echo living in her flesh. She could only name it an inexplicable thing, entirely separate from memory. Her admission became a powerful beacon of hope for him. He recited the doctor's hypothesis about emotional memory activating before factual data. She dismissed the clinical language, asking only for his presence. In the church's stillness, she abandoned thought and simply allowed herself to feel. Their path led next to a rooftop bar, a landmark from her new life after the memory loss. Giovanni guided her to a precise location, evoking the image of a great thunderstorm. He recounted how she had photographed the lightning, calling it a war across the city's sky. Standing just behind her, he softly retold the story of her first "I love you," spoken there as the tempest raged. The narrative sent a shockwave through her, an overwhelming blast of déjà vu. For one immaculate second, she was there again, feeling the downpour and the profound certainty of her heart. The recollection faded before she could grasp it, leaving her crying out in sheer frustration. Yet Giovanni framed this fleeting spark as a monumental win. He vowed to persist, guiding her through the map of their shared past for days to come. Their pilgrimage included the botanical garden of his proposal and the Michigan shores of their honeymoon. Each location summoned these emotional ghosts, feelings disconnected from any narrative. Dr. Reynolds would later validate this as the correct path, calling emotion the primary conduit for memory's return. The doctor proposed her hippocampus was destroyed while her amygdala remained intact, explaining the precedence of feeling over fact. A complete restoration was unlikely, but her emotional landscape was undeniably real. From this clinical verdict, a single, simple choice arose. She would go home. The resolution came from pure instinct, a conviction she could not articulate. Giovanni had been staying elsewhere to grant her space. The undisguised relief in his tone when she called was all the proof she required. He offered to wait, but she insisted he return to what she now called our house. She spoke the words with a newfound authority. During her parents' visit, her mother wept watching their synchronized movements in the kitchen, a physical memory her mind could not erase. Her father affirmed that her former joy was making a powerful return. He interpreted her choosing him again, not as fortune, but as fate correcting an error. With Megan, the slow work of rebuilding trust commenced. It involved viewing old home videos, assembling a forgotten existence with Giovanni, from celebrations to quiet daily routines. The woman on the screen seemed joyful, always reaching for him, her gaze filled with absolute faith. Megan was witnessing a lost version of herself, one who was utterly whole. She insisted that sensation of completeness was not just possible, but was already coming back. 3 weeks passed. They were preparing breakfast. Amid their simple routine, she remarked on her love for the rain, a characteristic he confirmed was elemental to her nature. In that serene moment, something clicked. The data was lost, but the emotional architecture remained. She spoke his name. He turned from the stove. She told him she loved him, the words feeling authentic and present. She clarified that she had no memory of the first time, but this new declaration was far more significant. He moved so quickly a spatula fell, his hands trembling as he pleaded for her to repeat it. She said it once more, emphasizing this was a fresh choice, not a memory on a loop. The kiss that came after was both a homecoming and a new beginning. They would write their story from this day forward, weaving in the phantom recollections as they emerged. She reasoned this journey was superior to a simple cure. A second conscious decision carried far greater meaning. As rain traced paths down the glass, they started to construct a future, liberated from a past she no longer required. Her present reality was enough. The 3 months following the revelation brought a total reconstruction of her world. Conversations with Dr. Reynolds centered on navigating memory voids and mourning losses she could not recall. Tiny fragments of her former life began to surface. The smell of cedar might conjure the spectral scent of an assailant's cologne. A song could awaken the muscle memory of a dance, completely devoid of context. These were mere emotional traces, not whole recollections. Dr. Reynolds called it the brain forging new pathways. He clarified her mind was creating new routes to safeguard her emotional connections. She felt she was building upon a foundation she could not perceive, a structure Dr. Reynolds assured her was sound. She began taking photographs again, the act now repurposed as a mission to build a new archive, and so her art transformed into a ledger to mend her broken memory. The focus of this new work? Giovanni, the very architect of her ruin. He thrived on the attention, while she declared him her one true constant. They engaged in profound discussions about their future, conversations she could not remember having before. They planned for children and travel, making the space a home, while Giovanni's syndicate needed her talents for their legitimate business front. Her professional skills, it turned out, were returning, a great convenience for her manipulator. The true fracture occurred exactly 3 months after Lauren's warning, triggered by a shift in the weather she had been unconsciously awaiting. Imagine them on a terrace as a storm gathers and he seizes the atmosphere. She confesses a love for storms, and he answers with a quiet knowing, I know. In that instant, he becomes the sole person who truly understands her. When she finally questions him, he admits to 2 years of obsessive observation, framing it as romantic. He spins his recent campaign of mental deception as an attempt to win her again, a monstrous revision of his calculated cruelty. She displayed all the signs of a trauma bond, needing his proximity while professing her love. She had convinced herself that yielding was her own powerful choice, a way to reconcile her feelings for this man. The predator needed to hear her say the words, to validate his success, and she completely submitted. They sealed their pact as the storm reached its zenith. His instruction to go inside was a small test of her compliance, yet she resisted, trying to sear the image into her mind. As the storm broke, she committed his face to memory, his eyes, attempting to forge a single true moment from an event founded on a complete fabrication. While she felt protected in this false sanctuary, the creator of her prison raised the topic of children. She agreed it was something they had always desired, grasping a new anchor that bound her to him. Her assent cemented the deception. The relief on his face at her agreement was palpable, proof he valued her for her ability to bear children. More twisted still, their therapy sessions reinforced his fabricated history, helping him curate memories for his narrative. Brief flashes of memory, a wedding, various journeys began to emerge, as if her mind were attempting a reboot. Simultaneously, her career flourished, her art serving as evidence of this meticulously constructed, false identity. Giovanni played the role of the devoted partner to her artistic career. 6 months after that night on the terrace, they chose to have a child, a strategic move to build a future that would obscure the past. 3 months later, the test was positive. She whispers that she is pregnant, a soul suspended between exhilaration and fear. Her manipulator calmly informs her that this is a normal response. This occurs exactly 12 months after the event that both unmade and remade her. Back in her studio, she leafs through a photo album of a life she has been told is hers. The faces are unfamiliar. Giovanni enters and asks what is wrong, and she simply gestures to her pregnant abdomen. They had learned it was a girl the previous week, and she'd had a powerful emotional response that felt strangely detached, a ghost feeling. He points to a photograph from that day, testing her, asking if she remembers being so happy. She confesses the day is a complete void, though she can see the happiness in the picture. He gently corrects her, saying she is happy, not was, anchoring her in the lie of a continuous present. She has abandoned hope of ever recovering the gaps. She closes the album and asks Giovanni to tell her their story. He pauses, then asks, "The real version or the one I invented?" Her request to hear both is a final surrender, granting him total control over her history. He weaves a grand narrative of her life, with himself as the constant hero. As if on cue, rain begins to fall outside, a perfect, cruel trigger that mirrors the storm within her own mind. As the rain streams down, she considers the many people she has been. She then thanks him, recasting his profound betrayal as a gift that allowed for a second, romantic beginning, thus validating his entire cruel game. She calls her repeated choice to love him a rare and precious thing, laying the final stone in the wall of her own delusion. He covers her hand on her belly, a silent gesture of ownership. He's not thankful for her love, he is thankful for her obedience. He tells her he is grateful she chose him twice, loving him without the benefit of a map of memories. She replies that memories are inconsequential. She simply recognizes his soul. The conditioning is absolutely complete. With the rain as their witness, they design a future, a fantasy erected upon a foundation of lies and fractured memories. In 6 months, their daughter will enter a world defined by her father's control and her mother's utter devotion. With vast portions of her past obliterated, she is now devoted to creating new memories in the present. This is not a choice. It is a mechanism of survival designed to protect the fragile, artificial world she now inhabits. Even her father wept on video calls, fully embracing the fiction. Her entire network, Megan, Lauren, her family, had become unwitting architects of the gilded cage that now enclosed her life.